Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of New Ways of Being. And as you know, in my podcast, we talk about new ways of being and different aspects, but now we're exploring into how we might be able to truly change the world by raising our consciousness. And so a book is being created. I'm being the project manager and the author of my chapter and editor, and pulling something together that I think is really needed in the world right now. And that is more awareness and more conversations about how we can change the world. And I believe the only true route of doing that is through raising our consciousness. And so we're going to talk about that today. My guest is Aura Nadrich. She is a mindfulness teacher and a podcaster, a book author, has done many different things. So let me begin by reading her short biography, and then we'll uh, get Aura to speak for herself here in just a moment. But Aura Nadrich is founder and president of the Institute for Transformational Thinking and author of Live True, a mindfulness guide to authenticity, named in the 100 best mindfulness books of all time. Wow, by Book Authority. And she is a certified life coach and does coaching, a mindfulness teacher specializing in transformational thinking, self discovery, and mentoring new coaches as they develop their careers. So, Aura, I know you are very busy, and so we will dive right into this today. Um, so, why don't you begin by just giving a short version of what led you to do all these wonderful things that you do, and and a little bit about what you think about consciousness and mindfulness.
Well, I have been an author now for, my goodness, over 15 years. And I started my work in the area of really meditation, which is what introduced me to my mindfulness work as well.
Mhm.
Because for those that maybe perhaps don't know, mindfulness is the practice of present moment awareness in all moments of our lives, not just when we're sitting on a yoga mat or a meditation pillow. It's having present moment awareness as much as we can in all of the awakened moments of our day. So I went from a meditation teacher, and I was you know, my meditation background really was I was an actress for 10 years, and
Oh, wow.
I got introduced to transcendental meditation, TM, also known as TM. And when I got introduced to transcendental meditation, it just changed my world because for someone who had not practiced meditation prior, it really helped me understand the contemplative practices like meditation and how beneficial it is to our lives. So I became a disciplined meditator for a very long time. I then went out of the entertainment industry temporarily and went into being an author of pretty much self-help books or raising awareness books, which is also another name for consciousness, which I know we'll be getting into more in depth. And I became certified in the practice of mindfulness meditation, and I started to teach that, and then began to write my books and started with my first book, Says Who, How One Simple Question Can Change the Way You Think Forever, which is also a contemplative practice of having the awareness of the thoughts that we think. So, this is the journey that I've been on for a very long time. I've taught workshops, I've blogged for some of the top magazines, all over the world, and continue my mindfulness practice and am teaching through my books, through my workshops, through my blogging, And the mindfulness work is something that I am very passionate about because I see how it is so beneficial to people out there.
Yes, very good. Well, thank you for that. And I know it's the short version of your
It
history.
is.
You've done so many things. I'm just totally amazed about what you do and how you manage all of that. But
Thank you.
let's explore into the subject um, of mindfulness and consciousness, and ultimately, I want to get to how that helps us change our lives and change the world. Um, so let's begin with your book, Live True. How long has that book been out?
That book's been out for over 5 years now. So it's been out for a while. It was my second book, if I have my chronology right with
Right.
my books. And it is a book that really does explain the whole mindfulness practice. And I coupled it with living one's life authentically and being present in all, again, as the mindfulness practice um, offers us so generously and so beautifully, is to be in the present moment with not only total awareness, but to be authentic to who we are in the moments of our life.
And that's so important. I think we see a lot of inauthenticity uh, in the world today. And we could talk, that's a whole nother subject of, but I kind of come from the point, well, I hear people say somebody needs to do something. The world's in a horrible state. How can we change the world? And so coming that brings us from a negative perspective. And I've really come to believe strongly that being stuck in that kind of thinking is not constructive. And I'm sure you talk about that as well. So we need to be aware of not only what we're thinking, but be aware of uh, what is true for us and possible for us, I guess.
Right.
And so,
And yes, and to be aware of not only the truth of ourselves, but how are we really parlaying that out into the external world? You know, that mindfulness and that thoughtfulness and that awareness gets carried over out into all the things that we do, and it gets carried over into our words, our thoughts, our actions, our deeds, our behaviors. So mindfulness really covers quite a wide range of awareness, if you will.
yes. So, and I think you told me once before, uh, you were on one of my podcast interviews a number of years ago. And I knew at the time that you had founded Institute for Transformational Thinking. And but I wasn't 100% clear about. I know you do thought coaching,
Yes.
and and so talk about how does there's kind of since the Power of Now book came
Hmm.
out by Eckhart Tolle some time ago. You know,
Right.
he really focused on we need to become more aware, less wrapped up in kind of chaotic thinking.
Hmm.
Um, And some people have taken his teaching to say that thinking and thought is not good. Well, obviously that's not true. It has its purpose. It's a powerful tool. But yeah,
Yes.
give me your perspective on thinking versus awareness.
Well, I agree that one of the most powerful um, things that we can do, how we function in our everyday life, is we are thinking beings. And what I pointed out in Says Who, that studies have shown that we think between 40 and 70,000 thoughts a day. Now, we're not cognizant of those thoughts, obviously.
Right.
They're moving through our minds very quickly. We're busy. We're very, bicameral. We're multitasking. We're not sitting around all day and going, oh, here's the thought that I'm having right now. Do you know?
Right.
And the thoughts that really get our attention, which is another thing I talk about in Says Who, is oftentimes our negative and fear-based thoughts. Those are the thoughts that seem to grip our attention, and we tend to zero in on those thoughts, and we either stay focused on them or we loop, meaning our mind can repeat those thoughts over and over again to us,
Right.
and it can dominate a good part of the activity of the thinking mind. And where mindfulness comes in and is so extremely helpful is that when we have an awareness of the thoughts that we have, again, we cannot have the awareness of the thousands of thoughts that we think per day, but we can certainly have an awareness of the thoughts that are getting our attention. And with Says Who, I have a 7 question method to be able to challenge the thoughts that come into our mind and not to just accept them readily. Because most often we do accept those negative
Yes.
and fear-based thoughts. They dominate the thinking mind, they pretty much hold us captive. And most people, when I presented Says Who out into the world, the method, and people said, well, I never thought to question my thoughts before.
Right.
I just accept them, and they've caused me great suffering, many people will say to me. So, this is the magnificence of the mindfulness practice, is that it makes you aware of the thoughts that you are having in the present moment, or a particular thought that you're having in that moment, so that you can really go into an observational mode, if you will, to have an awareness of this thought that has come up into the, dominant part of your thinking mind, your psyche. And you can ask yourself how you want to relate to that thought. Do you want it to make you feel anxious? Do you want it to make you feel afraid?
Mm.
And I speak like this, and someone might say, well, how do we have a choice? We get so dominated by this thought, we feel out of control. Well, the mindfulness practice allows you and encourages you to be present with the thought that you're having, no matter what that thought is. And when we're in observational mode, we're not reacting to that thought. We're not just, unconsciously being taken over by this thought and therefore feeling the what I call the side effects of that thought or the symptoms of that thought. A negative thought pops up or a fear-based thought pops up, all of a sudden you feel your heart racing and you feel anxious or you
Right.
feel mad or you feel all sorts of emotional things that you are at the effect of because you haven't disengaged from the thought and become more of an observer of it rather than a reactor of it. So these are tremendous skill sets to use so that one can have a very healthy and a proactive relationship with the thinking mind to be able to literally pick and choose the thoughts that work for you favorably and to be able to replace the thoughts that don't with what I call their positive counterpart. So you start to learn how to not default to a negative place of thinking, but to a positive place of thinking. And you can take any thought, even the worst negative thought that you might be having or fear-based thought, and say, oh, okay, I'm having this thought. It's making me feel very anxious. It's making me feel afraid. How can I work with that thought? How can I perhaps even change that thought out for something more positive and life affirming? And by reframing thoughts, we're actually changing our consciousness.
Very good. Thank you for that beautiful explanation. I think that's very helpful for people to, we hear about mindfulness and they have a very vague idea of what that is, but it's helpful to hear it explained in more detail.
Yes, Raymond, let me just interject quickly. I want people to understand that they can actually have a working relationship with their thoughts, that they're not at the effect of every thought they have, which renders them feeling as though they're kind of a hostage to their own thinking mind. Do you know?
You're right. Good point. Now, are there different types of mindfulness practices?
Well, mindfulness is the practice of present moment awareness. So, one could say, well, there's many different ways in which one can help themselves become a more aware
Right.
human being. So, mindfulness unto itself is the practice of present moment awareness, meaning that you have a present awareness of, like I said, the thoughts that you have, your behaviors, your actions, your deeds. So you start to take responsibility for the thoughts that you have, knowing that you can work with them and even change them, and how those thoughts affect your relationship to yourself, to others, to your community, to your society, and then out in the world in all the ways that you relate to your human existence, if you will.
Very good. Yes. Now you have a newer book that's out, and um, and I'm looking at your web page right now, a beautiful website.
Thank you.
Um, and your latest book is Time to Awaken. And I love that because the subtitle is Changing the World with Conscious Awareness. And so that's what this We Can Change the World book is certainly all about. It helped bring me you to my attention, I guess is the right way to say it. And it sounds um, like it's exactly the same subject, but let you tell what the book is all about and how you've written it. I've even heard of some that are novels and set in fiction, but
Right. Well, I felt inspired to write Time to Awaken at a time when the world was changing very exponentially. It was, um, right after 2020 when the COVID pandemic really took hold globally. And it really sent tremendous fear throughout the world. And people went into a very heightened state of fear. So,
right,
being that I'm a mindfulness practitioner, I really wanted to plug in the mindfulness work to a time that was very unprecedented, where I knew that people were in a very unnatural state of heightened fear individually and collectively and globally. Again, it was unprecedented. So I really wanted to take the mindfulness practice and bring it into a occurrence that was unlike anything we've experienced before, certainly not in my lifetime.
right,
And I knew that because being in a heightened state of fear, where you're in a fight or flight fear, because people were very afraid. They were very afraid for their health. They were afraid for their well-being. They were afraid for their survival.
right,
And it really had me go deep into the understanding of how unnatural that is. It's very unnatural to be in a heightened state of fear for prolonged periods of time. Do you know? I mean,
right,
we take the time of the hunter and gatherer that would go out and have to hunt for their food and would be very cognizant of the possibility that a saber-toothed tiger could jump out of a tree or somewhere and attack you and kill you. So survival was very much a dominant
right,
reality in somebody's psyche at that time. We've evolved, since then, and there's nothing wrong with having fear. Fear is a genuine, helpful emotion, but not when it takes you over indefinitely, and not when it takes you over and disrupts your life in a way that you can't function in a way that feels reasonable or healthy or proactive and productive. So the book really goes deep into all these areas of understanding the times that we're in and how challenging they have become and continue to be, by the way. I wrote that book a couple of years ago, excuse me, and many things still occur and have occurred since then, as we know, unless
yes.
you're living under a rock. know that the world has changed and is continuing to change daily. And mindfulness couldn't be a more important and crucial practice than it is for the times that we're in today.
When you say time to awaken, to you, does awakening mean simply becoming aware in the present moment, or is it more than that?
Yes, first and foremost, it's having the awareness in the present moment. Let's start with that. Like, let's just start with learning how to be more present in the moment of which we are in right now. And I say in my book, there is no more real moment than the moment that you're in right now because you're alive in this moment. The future isn't here yet, and the past is come and gone. So we really have to value that we are alive one more minute, and which really conjures up gratitude that we are recognizing. And this already is jump-starting the mindfulness awareness of that, oh, I'm alive in this moment right now. What does this moment mean to me? How is this moment useful to my life? How am I using this moment to be a useful human being on the planet? So, yes, mindfulness, first and foremost, let's start with it's the conscious awareness of who we are in the moment of which we are in. And when you start to do that with every moment that you're in, or at least aspire, it's very aspirational to practice mindfulness, you start to become a more conscious human being, which I think we absolutely need more of today.
Yes, absolutely. That's that's what this is all about. What I was alluding to was awakening in the spiritual sense has some additional meanings to it, and I don't know if you focus on any of those or not.
Yes, I do, Raymond, in that I do feel that being an awake human being, and awake again, it's interchangeable with being a conscious human being. When you're conscious, you're
Mhm.
aware. When you're aware, you're awake. You're
Yes.
not semi-awake, you're awake. Now, there's different levels of awareness, as we know. We can aspire to become more awake human beings every day of our life. We can become, it's like widening the lens of a camera. So you
Yes.
get a wider vantage point of what you are looking at. You
Good
can look.
analogy. I like that.
Exactly. You could be looking at a landscape. You can be looking at a sunset. You can be looking at anything. You could be looking at a great piece of art. And I might be zeroing in on something on that piece of art, and you're looking at something entirely different. And you're noticing something that I'm not noticing or haven't
Mhm.
noticed yet. So our awareness is based on really how awake are we? How aware? How elucidated, how crystal clear is our awareness so that can become more aware of the bigger picture, if you will.
Mhm. Okay. There's a lot of ways we can go with this, but let's keep
And I hope I
the
answered your question about the spiritual aspect of it.
yeah.
Because I do believe that when one has committed themselves to a life of conscious awareness,
Mhm.
you start to look at life in a way that is um, very non-separate, if you will. You
Yes.
start to look at life in a way that you start to connect to
Yes.
others. We're living in a time where there's a lot of othering, if you will. There's a lot of people looking at each other as, well, you're other. And so we're very polarized today. We're living in a very, polarized time, I feel. And the mindfulness work starts to make you feel less separate from other and more connected to all sentient beings, and then your
Yes.
awareness of your judgment, your awareness of your emotions, whatever they might be, dislike, even hatred,
Right.
because that can fester in people and that can cause them to default to a place of non-inclusivity
Right.
and harshness towards their fellow human beings. So I feel mindfulness is a very heart-based practice. It really connects you to your deeper understanding of your humanity, I feel.
Yes. Well, I love the way you approached your answer there in talking about um, that, you know, our natural inherited programming about the world has been very much based in separation. We see
Yes.
ourselves as having separate bodies. Uh, we not may not have any idea of how we might be more connected than that. But if we have one of the things that I think happened for me and happens for other people as well is as you become more aware and more expanded in your awareness, you begin to see that there's more to life and more to the world than maybe you thought. And that can go quite big or deep, however
Yes.
way you want to
Yes.
say it. It can
Yes.
connect you to the divine. It can
Exactly.
connect you to all beings. Uh, many,
Exactly.
many possibilities, and spiritual awakening gets very much into that. But I think it is helpful for people to also have a beginning view of awakening being in terms of awareness. I think that is just absolutely key is to everyone, to their own success and to the possibility of helping to change the world is to be
Right.
more aware of ourself and our thoughts, as you've been saying, and more aware of the world. And, is this belief in separation true or not true? We hear different things about uh, studies of quantum physics telling us that the quantum field says we're interconnected, and
Yes.
and what does that all mean?
Right.
So it's but it all begins, changing our reaction to the world and our ability to make differences is based in awareness.
Right. And having that awareness, Raymond, and you put that in such a lovely way, we begin to have the awareness of when we are succumbing to a type of thinking that is not supporting our connectivity with others or not supporting our acceptance of others. The mindfulness practice, again, makes one very aware of, as I said earlier, behaviors and actions and deeds. And so, at a time right now when I think that have moved away from a lot of these practices that really keep us connected, even in a civil way, the whole art
Right.
of discourse, if you will, the way in which we talk to one another, the way in which we are able to converse and talks, respectfully to each other, even if we have difference of opinions, is extremely important at this time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I happen to believe that we are a part of this great whole that is ultimately in of the universe. But that, and actually I'll mention this because I mention it in my podcast, but many people are not aware that science in the last 5 years, has made a significant shift to understanding that consciousness is fundamental in the universe.
Yes.
Now, in science, that's a big deal because all of the conversations up till now has either dismissed consciousness or said that it's purely produced by the brain, a very materialistic view of the world. But now, you know, spiritual teachers for a long time have taught no, what we call God or the divine or any name that we choose to use is pure consciousness. And if
Yes.
we understand that that's fundamental in the universe, it changes a lot because, well, that says, well, okay, I think that's saying maybe God is within me, and it has to mean that God is within that other person too, to
Yes.
some degree, depending on how you interpret it. But
Yes, which I
Go
think is
ahead.
really, well, I think it's really important. One of the things that I wrote in my book, Time to Awaken, I delved into the area of artificial intelligence, AI. And it really behooves us to understand that we are at a time where our technology is advancing so exponentially that for anybody who really understands, you know, AI or the transhumanist uh, thinking, if you will, that man transcends
Mhm.
his human biology and becomes more machine-like. Well, you can't get any more antithetical to the moving away from human consciousness because you're talking about human consciousness versus artificial intelligence. And it's another way of saying it's human consciousness versus artificial intelligence. Does artificial intelligence even have have consciousness? I mean, without going too existential and philosophical in our
Right.
conversation. But I like to look at all of those things. And I also like to pay attention to the changes that are upon us, which again are moving very quickly. So I think that that awareness of having an awareness of all the things that are happening, you know, personally, individually, and collectively keeps us connected to the changes of our times. We have to be aware of the changes of our times so that we can understand them better and that we don't allow these changes to overpower us and again bring us into that separateness or
Yes.
even the fear of not understanding something that is happening in our times, which we need to understand more about it. Do you know? So
Yes.
artificial intelligence is here. It's real. It's happening and it's going to happen. It's happening and it's going to move quickly over the next however many years, pretty fast. So I was fascinated by the consciousness of something like that versus human consciousness, which, if anything, should give us a stronger awareness of our consciousness in human form, do you know, and the
Right.
role that it plays on, supporting our, you know, civilization, our humanity, how we want to live in the world, taking at what I call a spiritual pulse on who am
Yes.
I and who am I in relation to others and the world. I think if everybody could do that, we would be moving into these changes rather than being separated by our difference of thoughts and opinions. We can come together and agree that our priority is to help preserve our humanity.
Yes. Well, what one thing that I'm hearing more and more is something that I believe very strongly, and that is we need to shift our consciousness from separation and fear to unity and love.
Right,
And
right.
I heard you saying, something very much the same, that, we need to we need to be aware of what we are experiencing and, ask the questions about what is causing that.
Hmm.
And as you were alluding, ask the questions, well, is that good for us to be in separation? No, I don't think so. I think unity and community and um, people talk about oneness. All of those things are so important for our reality, and there are lots of ways we can approach it and talk about it. Now science is beginning to shift and see things a little differently, and I think that's good to know. But it brings us back to what spiritual masters have taught for millennia and what indigenous people have taught, for thousands and thousands of years, that unity is vitally important, and we need to see ourselves as part of a living world
Hmm.
and help the health of that living world.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And what is our relationship to it and how are we functioning and what are we contributing? Do you know? It's like the beautiful quote of Gandhi, be the change you wish to see in the world. If each one of us took responsibility for how we feel we can improve this world, we would start with a conscious awareness and take responsibility for what we're putting out there. Do you know? Again, with
Yes.
our thoughts, with our actions, with our deeds, everything. Do you know? And we would have
Yes.
a conscious awareness of how we are coexisting.
I have to point out something here that is, I think is significant, and that is I've been reaching out to very knowledgeable people about consciousness and how to interact and in the world and to change our lives and to make a difference. And just a very large number of people now are talking about unity and love
Hmm.
much more openly, and saying that it's critical for us to uh, experience unity and love,
Hmm.
and experience a world that supports that
Hmm.
as opposed to the opposite.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I hear you agreeing totally.
Yes, absolutely. The only way we're going to really see the changes and to be able to really um, implement positive changes in our world is that if each one of us takes responsibility for how we envision helping make our world a better place. Do you know? Not passing it over to the next person or projecting others to make that happen for us, or you know just assuming that our government or any strong, powerful entity, if you will, is going to take responsibility for us. We are a collective. We matter. Our voices matter. Who we are matters. And that, to really recognize that each and every one of us can make a difference is, again, it's the type of thinking that has more conscious awareness, if you will. And if each and every one of us really valued that, we would take much more responsibility for how we want to be out in the world. And again, the beautiful Gandhi quote, be the change. If I consider myself that I have the ability to be the change, to affect change out in the world, well, I'm going to do, my hardest to make sure that I am doing that, in a way that can really make something positive happen.
I love that. Yes. I heard you kind of allude to something that made me think a little bit about, um, we the world, and I think this is especially true in the U.S. I don't know about the world as a whole, but that it's so easy to get caught up in thinking about the problems that we have, focusing on those, and thinking of ourselves as victims, and thinking of,
Mhm.
you know, somebody else, and they don't know who it is, but they need to
Mhm.
do something to change this.
Mhm.
There's a lot of that kind of thinking in the world, and is that all is in consciousness.
Right.
But whether we're being conscious of that thinking and our reaction to those thoughts, like you've brought up many times, and or can we stop and question those thoughts and those feelings?
Mhm. Mhm.
And and so I've certainly believed for a long time that it begins with us becoming more aware, more self-aware, aware of our thoughts and our feelings, and aware of the world as well. But
Right.
that's exactly what you've been saying throughout this conversation, and it's
Yes,
so important.
it is. It really is, Raymond. Self-awareness is extremely important. Do you know? And if we look homeward, if we look to our own hearts and our own soul, and we have a deep understanding of who we are and what we're doing here on this earth, we really will live more mindfully, because we will value the meaning of our life and want to parlay that to others. And again, which is the rippling effect, it ripples out wide and far. And we do start to take responsibility of, again, how are we contributing to the betterment of our humanity and to the betterment of the world?
Yes. So it seems to me that a big thing is to help people become aware that they have some options, that
Yeah,
they can change their thinking, they can change their level of awareness.
right.
And obviously, you've been doing that for many years, and other people have as well. But I'm hoping that this book, We Can Change the World, will reach other people that haven't been reached before to think about this as well and become aware that change is possible, not just in myself, but in the world around me. Because if I change myself, then I begin to affect the world around me.
Right. And we can change one thought at a time.
Yes. Yeah, we
Start
don't have
thought at a time.
good point. We don't have to do it all at once.
No, we don't. If
That's
we could change one thought and transform that thought, again, my Institute of Transformational Thinking is really about that. It's about working with our thoughts and how can I take a particular thought that serves no purpose for my well-being? And if it doesn't serve a purpose for my well-being, a positive purpose, how would that serve anybody else positively? But if I can change that thought, if I can transform that thought and turn it into one that is positive and self-supportive and life-affirming and selflessly wanting the best for our humanity in the world, then I am changing my consciousness one thought at a time. So I want people to have an understanding that this doesn't have to be a broad stroke aspiration. It can literally be working with your thoughts one thought at a time.
now one thing in your mindfulness teaching. Um, do you particularly focus in on habit? You know, I think what I've learned over many years is, we can easily be caught up in a world that's very habitual. We have the habit of responding to something, a negative comment or whatever it might be in a
Mhm.
certain way. And so we are very responsive, very reactive is probably the better word. And we can be totally in the habit of living that way, and not having a large awareness of our present moment living. It's
Yes, which is why,
awareness.
go ahead.
Awareness might be small, a small part of our consciousness, and habitual thinking might be big. And so we need to become aware of that to begin to change it. Is that something you teach?
Absolutely, yes, because that again puts you in the observational mode as opposed to the reactive mode. And when you become more observant of your thoughts, you become much more aware of the thoughts that you wish to leave your mouth.
Mhm.
What is it that you want to say? What is it that you want to communicate? Are you contributing something positive to this moment in your discussion with another? So, yes, starting from that point of the awareness of the thoughts that we have and the thinking that we have really does go from, the micro to the macro. It really does, small or large, it's serving the bigger purpose.
Okay. Oh, I do want to ask you about one other thing. I know, and I apologize, I've not found the opportunity to listen to your podcast, Daily Clout, The Mindful Activist. And that sounds like it might get into all of this kind of discussion.
Well, that's something that I did, uh, well, it's almost going on a year and a half ago. I delved into the area again of taking mindfulness and plugging it into the area of topics, be it political, social, geopolitical, if you will. I wanted to take mindfulness, because I say mindfulness can be plugged into everything and anything. Do you know, you start to have a mindful awareness of you pick it and you can plug it right into it. So I was invited in to be the mindful activist on Daily Clout, which is a wonderful um, journal outlet that's magnificent. So I'm not doing it at this time because I was working on another book.
Ah,
And so I kind of decided to put a little bit of a stop to things that I love doing, by the way, but I really wanted to go back into the laboratory, if you will, and
ah,
think about writing another book. So I've been working on some different projects.
very good, very good. Well, that's good to know. And I love what you said there. Mindfulness is something we can plug into every aspect of life, and it could be from an activist point of view of, what can I do about it in my work or my world, or it can be more inner based of simply be more aware of what we're thinking and how we're
Exactly
feeling.
right. And they're not mutually exclusive. You know, the inner work that one does to develop a keener sense of self-awareness this is work that we do daily. You know, we can always become more aware human beings. There's no cap on awareness. Do you know what I mean? The more aware we become, the more aware we become.
Right.
So what I say about mindfulness, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yes.
You continue to become a more aware, conscious human being. Isn't that great?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I've got one more question I want to ask, and that has to do with evolution. And uh, I think human consciousness evolves. And I
Hmm.
think we're at a point in time where it needs to evolve more. I expressed it in terms of shifting from consciousness of separation and fear to consciousness of unity and love. But as soon as we begin to truly make that shift and say that yes, that's important, and I'm going to make that a part of my life in some way in my mindfulness practice. Um, but human, the collective human consciousness will evolve, I believe, as we do more of that. Do you agree? And what are your thoughts about conscious evolution?
Absolutely. I think conscious evolution is inevitable and it's unstoppable. I mean, we're evolving daily, again, individually and collectively, and as a humanity, as a species, as, people that are inhabiting this earth, it's an evolutionary process. And we have been able to see from our history, from our past, and the visions of what we feel the future is going to look like. We have an ability to change our evolution and decide the direction in which we want it to go. That's why this work is so important, because
Yes,
if we're working on ourselves and the expansiveness of our own consciousness, we are contributing to a ever evolving evolution that we again are a part of.
yes,
We are weaving the tapestry together.
yes. I think this is so important that I think a lot of people feel fairly hopeless in the world and they see the world is out of control and there's nothing that maybe that anyone can do about it. But, we need people like you and I to be speaking about this and sharing these thoughts to say, we do have the power to change. We can change ourselves. That's where it all begins. And we can expand our consciousness, and every other person has that same capability. They just may not be aware of it.
Exactly right, Raymond. That's why it's more important now than before or any moment before this moment because we have greater challenges today. And I believe that, you know, why we have moved so far away from the connectivity, if you will, or the unity of consciousness is
Right.
because we have allowed ourselves to become more unconscious, if you will. We've allowed so much of the external world to dictate to us
Yes.
how our interests and our distractions and how our the things that we think matter to us. I mean, with the advent of social media and our technology, we're being challenged daily. You
Yes.
know, people are relying more on these external things to, especially our younger generation, which is something to really think about, to teach you how to think, to teach you, you know, to have, critical thinking skills, doing it for you when these are things that we should be developing ourselves. So I feel this is such a pivotal time in our awakening, in our conscious evolution, if you will, that we need to awaken more than ever before. I believe we are in the midst of a profound spiritual awakening, and each and every one of us can choose how we want to be a part of it.
Yes. I agree with you. Um, I think we are in the midst of a profound awakening that has begun to happen.
Hmm.
I hear some people say, but there's a tipping point, and can we change humanity enough in time? Um,
Hmm.
and those are unanswered questions, but I think we do have the power to change. And if we help other people become more aware,
Hmm.
take responsibility for ourselves to become more aware and help others to become more aware to the degree that we can,
Right.
that will matter.
Exactly right. And going back to just having a wholesome relationship to our own thinking mind, keep in mind when times are most difficult and most challenging, be aware of the thoughts that are occupying your mind because it's very easy to succumb to a type of futility and a type of hopelessness
Right.
and a type of ennui and to feel inert, do you know? And that is the very time when you need to really say things to yourself like, I am not going to succumb to that thought. That thought is very defeatist, and I don't have to give into it. Even though we have every right to feel very concerned about the times that we're in, that's necessary. We have to be aware of the times that we're in and the seriousness of the times that we're in. But we also have to, again, lift ourselves up by the thoughts that we tell ourselves that yeah, it's a tough time and it's a challenging time. But again, how can we let this mobilize us with a sharper, keener, mindful awareness of taking responsibility for who we are and again the thoughts that we have and how do we want to, even during a difficult time, you know, take it higher, take it higher. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And those are the opportunities, by the way, to really connect to something. You know, you say the divine, which is one of my favorite ways to describe in a non-denominational way. And I respect everybody and anybody wherever they find true meaning for their soul. Do you know, whether it's in a religious context or a spiritual context? But when times are most difficult, those are when we can go deeper within ourselves and ask ourselves those very profound questions about how can I really change in a way that's transformational, that can really stand up to the times that I'm in and be the kind of person that I know that I can be, the better person that I can be, so that I can connect to others in the world. And again, it's the rippling effect in that we are building a greater unity than we are a separateness. Do you know?
Yes. Well, I love what you just shared there. That's very powerful. I think we need to pay attention to our thinking, and not give in to despair, but take responsibility for our own selves and to um, help change the world by that very behavior, because other people do see that in us when we approach our life in a more powerful way. We don't have to be victims,
No,
uh, but
no.
people need to hear that, and to
Yes,
hear that there's a way to do that.
right.
I was going to ask you to, are there any final thoughts you want to share with the audience today? But I think you just did that in a beautiful way.
Thank you, Raymond. And I so appreciate having this conversation with you. I think it's such an important one to have. Really, I would leave with, again, if we ask ourselves the important questions each day, who am I? You know, um, what is my purpose here? What do I have to contribute? And knowing that each of us matters and that we have what we spoke about from the very beginning of our conversation, our thoughts are very powerful. They really help shape the world in which we live. And so start today. Everybody can start today. Today is a new beginning. It really is. It's a new slate, and we can have a very exciting relationship with our thinking mind. I think it's very exciting, actually, to say to oneself, wow, I have the power to take agency over my thinking mind, and I can curate the type of thoughts that I think are not only useful to me, but useful out in the world. Isn't that exciting? So it really does conjure up excitement for me to know that we have that ability to really start afresh each day.
Yes, absolutely. And I love the way you said that. We can have a more powerful relationship with our own mind. Uh,
Yes.
that's that's should be on a flag somewhere, and we should be waving it.
Thank
Laura
you.
Nadrich, thank you so much for being here today, and your wisdom in about mindfulness and how we can be the kind of person we want to be in the world is just wonderful. And thank you for being here to share that with us.
Thank you, Raymond.
And to my audience, have a great day and a great life.